Hey, everybody. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. Thanks for coming back to our podcast. We are here today to talk about a very timely topic, marijuana. And we have with us today a professional safety expert and lean specialist, Brian Matyjevich. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Hello, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming.
So I'm up in Northeast Pennsylvania here. We finally got some warm weather. I believe you're down in Florida somewhere, and it's always warm.
Yeah, pretty much. Hey, yesterday I actually had to wear a jacket and socks too. So yeah, we're a little bit of cold once in a while. But you know what? I want to talk about safety in the workplace and specifically how it's related to marijuana, which has become increasingly more popular. And then on top of that, legal in some states and not legal in other states. But before we jump into that, talk to me about, your experience. How did you get to where you are today as a professional safety expert and lean specialist?
Thank you. So I've been in manufacturing for over 30 years. I came from a large steel firm. We did all kinds of jobs. You work your way up type of stuff. Everybody gets into safety by accident. That's the way they look at it. And that's where I'm at right now. I work for a NEPERC. It's a Northeast Pennsylvania Industrial Resource Center. We are one of 62 resource centers in Pennsylvania. There's some in your neck of the woods. They're all over the area. And I teach safety. How did I get started in it? I was sucked into a machine. I was wrapped up into a lathe. I lost a lot of skin. I had 4 shoulder surgeries. If you ever seen these horrific videos on YouTube, TikTok, and whatnot, where you turn away really quickly, I'm that guy, but I'm actually alive. I stayed alive for it. But that's not even why I was hired. I was hired to do some lean stuff. You had said that I do lean. I'm a Six Sigma Master Black Belt. I'm an auditor. I walk through many manufacturers. We have 1,000 of them in Northeast Pennsylvania. And I'm looking for, instruments. I'm looking for ways to improve their process. But there's a safety problem, and there's a safety problem, and there's a safety problem. So I switched my role over to safety. I was grateful enough for the company to allow me to go out and help manufacturers freely go through and audit their facilities. We formed an OSHA alliance with our local district. They help us. They legally can help us, tell us what to do, help them all out, lean on my experience. And this morning I spoke to American Safety Society of Professionals, which is another nationwide group. They're all over. I've been in Orlando before. This one was in our local college. All safety people like me go, what do we got to do? And my topic was, like you said, medical marijuana.
Yeah, so let's talk about, first of all, yikes. I'm glad that you survived that whole incident and then also are stopping or helping prevent other people from being injured. So thank you for that. We need safety experts in the workplace. Many of our listeners that are on today are wearing the HR hat, the safety hat, the small business owner hat. And so it is hard to keep up with safety concerns and specifically around marijuana and medical marijuana, just about impairment risks. What the heck is the difference between medical and recreational marijuana in the United States? For our listeners who don't know this, the main difference is CBD or THC content. There are 2 active ingredients without getting into the specifics, but recreational marijuana typically has much more THC content than medicinal CBD. THC is the part that's responsible for making the users feel high and impaired, which, right, Brian, might be a safety issue.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You think about safety at work. All right, what are these guys doing? They're driving their car to work on an influence. They're, maybe they're getting in fights, maybe not showing up to work. No, it's beyond that. When you think about safety sensitive positions, I myself, when I got hired at the company I'm at now, I did not have a drug test. Why? Because the worst machine is maybe my car or the paper shredder or the K-cup machine in the cafeteria. In manufacturing, which is mainly who we go after to help, everything is safety sensitive. Think about DOT, FAA, safety sensitive positions. You're driving a bus, you're flying an airplane, you're driving a boat, you're driving a train. You can kill yourself or somebody else. The same way in manufacturing. If I push this button, the machine's going to move that way and I can kill somebody. I get behind the seat of a forklift and I'm under the influence. So these are all safety sensitive. I can kill myself and kill other people. And people forget about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other interesting thing is, that marijuana, pot, has become popular, more popular, not just as a recreational use of, hey, we're having some fun, sort of like alcohol, but it is 100% being prescribed by doctors. And so this really, gets HR and office managers and business managers scratching their head going, we don't know what to do because it was prescribed by our employees' doctors and hopefully actually legal in that state. We'll get to that in a minute. And, even if it is prescribed as a medicine, should we allow it? Should we allow it in a safety sensitive environment? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's the same way. My daughter just turned 21 and I took her to the casino and, we had a good time. It was a little rough for me. I decided to quit drinking. So I'm signing up for the casino 442 days today. And I'm like, oh, I got to go in there. And we saddle up to the machine. She wins some money. Happy birthday to me. Just because she turned 21 doesn't mean she could walk into her job at the vet's office with some alcohol in her hand. She cannot do that. Well, it's the same way with marijuana. Just because in some states it's legal, recreational or medicinally, doesn't mean you can take it to work. You're firing me because I have medical marijuana card? No, you're getting fired, buddy, because you were doing it at work. You walked in the door. You're doing it in your car. How did you get here? And then we go into the same thing that I know you're aware of. I've seen your material for reasonable suspicion. How do you determine that person is under the influence versus today versus yesterday?
Yeah, and that's a very good point. There are studies done in 2023 that show a 10% increase in workplace injuries among young workers in the states with legalized medical marijuana or legalized recreational marijuana. So 10% increase in workplace injuries, folks, that means that your workers' comp insurance is going to go up, or even worse than going up is the insurance company is going to drop you altogether. And if one insurance company drops your company, you guarantee another insurance company is going to know that, and they're not going to want to pick it up either. So, what are your views on that about, getting injured in the workplace because of alcohol or because of legal or illegal marijuana?
Well, if you're talking stats, so here's a good number for you from Quest Diagnostics. These are the ones that, send the drug tests out after somebody's injured. I get hurt on the job, we're going to drug test you. Quest Diagnostics report a 114.3% increase in post-accident positivity rates from 2015 to 2023. And that's just in the general U.S. workforce.
Wow.
That's a huge amount, and it's increasing. 2020, 8% were positive, 9% were positive in 2022, and 2024 was 12%. But the staggering number, the scary number, is of the numbers of the people that they're testing for pre-employment. Hey, you got to work here, you got machines, it's construction, it's whatever. You need to go and get a drug test. 633% increase in cheating on the drug test, not positive, cheating. That means you're hiding something. So 633%. And there's 3 cheat methods. One is substitution. You literally take someone's urine and put it on your belly, you tape it to your belly. We have additives that you would put into it. And then finally, the folklore of I'm just going to drink tons and tons of water and try and dilute it. And they catch you on that. So people are trying that. It doesn't work. The science behind it does not work.
How else can they cheat? I mean, that's just gross, taping somebody's urine to your stomach, but I get it. And that's been going on for years, by the way, folks. This isn't just because of marijuana. This is because of other things. How else can they cheat?
Well, I don't want to give you all the answers, but I've heard, listen, I can tell you every story in the world of what to do with alcohol, bubble gum, all that stuff, mints, sprays, body sprays, all those types of things. That was my expertise, I guess you could say, from my college years. But one of the ones that I have heard from people are eye drops. You put eye drops in with the urine. It's supposed to cancel it out. Dish soap, believe it or not, I'm assuming it would be bubbly. And even drain cleaner in there. First of all, I've heard some of these drug testing institutes, and I don't per se want to put a name out there of a company to sell, but there are a lot of companies that will come to you if there's an injury. Sorry, sir, I want to tell you something that you're positive for marijuana. Oh, and you're pregnant,
Oh,
So that's what they're saying. you are definitely cheating. You're definitely cheating. It's like, okay,
Yeah, that's a
mom.
really good point. You know what, though? Thanks for bringing up the college days, the alcohol stuff, because I want to remind our listeners that, listen, somebody might be drunk or, recovering from being hammered last night, but alcohol goes out of your system a lot faster than marijuana, whether it's recreational marijuana or medical marijuana. So I want you to also consider making sure that your HR department or your managers are able to spot when somebody has been maybe, I don't know, drinking at lunch, because it then will go out of their system. If you don't test them till the next day, that alcohol is not going to be in their system likely, unless they were pounding drinks again in the morning. But marijuana, they may not have had, they may have had recreation or medical marijuana a week ago, and it's still in their system. So Brian, like, are there any new tests coming up that say, okay, we can test if the user is high right now, or it was from a week ago?
So I think you've been reading some research, or maybe you're going on some of my other classes here. You're reading my mind. So there is. I may have said our federal stakeholders are NIST. I don't know if I mentioned that. National Institute of Standards and Technology. So I like that my phone listens to me when I go and read my news. Some of the stuff comes up: marijuana, forklift accidents, workplace, OSHA. One day I open my phone and there's an article from this that they're developing a new science behind it. Because there are stakeholders, I called out to them. I sat in my home office. I had some meetings with a team of scientists who spoke languages that, be honest, went over my head a little bit. I didn't quite understand all of it, but they're actually developing a science to it. April 24th, we have our Manufacturing Safety Network meeting up here in Northeast PA, and they'll be attending the meeting from Colorado to share the science behind it. What I gather, and the preliminary report, it'll be 2 samples they'll be taking because it's such a small amount to it. If you read into it, then here's the other issue. If you've ever gone to a dispensary, and full clarity, I did. In 2016, I was battling colon cancer. I was one of the first in my county to get a medical marijuana card. Turns out it's not for me. I quickly gathered all the stuff and gave it to my brother and said, here, this is more of up your alley. I'm not this guy. I'm a high energy guy. But on the back of the bottle, it tells you a certain percentage, 7% this, 14% this. And the scientists tell me, how are you measuring that? Where are you getting those numbers? Can you tell me the calibrated device you were using for that? And that's where it kind of all started. So when I reached out to them, I said safety sensitive positions. And what we found out was they weren't really targeting manufacturing. They were targeting DOT, FAA, police officers. How do we do a breathalyzer on the side of the road type situation? So we're going to learn more from them. They're going to keep us in the loop, and hopefully we're going to see something. They're not making the product. They're making the science behind the product.
I love it. Thank you so much. And yeah, remember, folks, just because your doctor prescribed marijuana, even in a state that's recreational, doesn't mean that you have to allow your workers to be stoned in the workplace or to be using any type of CBD or THC to help with their medical issue. However, I do want you to know that you may still have to accommodate your workers. And what I mean by that is there's accommodation laws for any kind of, drug, alcohol, whatever it might be. But that doesn't mean you can, that the doctor is mandating that, yep, this employee, whether it's a safety sensitive position or not, they are allowed to be using THC and CBD at work. Now, one of the things that you may want to do as accommodation is possibly have remote workers, or changing their hours of work so that they can leave work early and then go ahead and take their medicine. It's just, you have to think about medical marijuana or recreational marijuana, just like any other drug or any other disability as well. If for those folks that are new to listening to the podcast, I love this network called the Job Accommodation Network, JAN. There's a website called Ask Jan, so askjan.org, and it's Job Accommodation Network. And they have very specific information in the Ask Jan network, which, by the way, our tax dollars pay for that. So please go use it and don't try to figure these things out yourself. It is an amazing network that talks about the Americans with Disabilities Act, which we all have to comply with. Many states have their own ADA, but all of us have to follow the federal ADA. But then many states also have their own version of a state ADA. ADA The ADA looks at marijuana and says it focuses on protecting individuals with disabilities. It doesn't necessarily offer protection for individuals who use marijuana just to have fun, whether it's their legal right or not. So if you are trying to figure out hey, I work in 3 states or we have employees in 3 states, go to the Ask Jan network. That'll give you a starting point, and then know that state laws are changing all the time. We mentioned statistics before. In 2023, 24 states in the United States have legalized recreational marijuana use, leading to, again, 10% increase in workplace injuries among young workers. And they're saying young workers are 20 to 34 years of age. Additionally, what I wanted to note was that as of this year, 2025, 21 U.S. states have enacted laws prohibiting employment discrimination against medical marijuana users. So let me repeat that. 21 states, almost half the states, have laws that say you as an employer cannot discriminate against medical marijuana users. You have to consider reasonable accommodations for those individuals. And a reasonable accommodation for me, if I was a user and a medical marijuana user, or a reasonable accommodation for somebody else, they could be 2 totally different things. So don't just copy and paste your accommodation. So with that said, what are your thoughts on that, Brian, especially when it is related to safety and impairment?
So impairment, that's a true word. You really have to think about it. What is impairment? I am a lightweight. If you were to give me some marijuana right now, I'm done. I'm not going to work tomorrow. Not today, tomorrow. I am done. I'm out. However, there are habitual users who can use it all the time. They can have it at work. They can function. They can do that. So what it comes down to is what I've researched, what I've talked to with nationwide firms, OSHA, head of OSHA. I've even went out to Colorado. I said, wait a minute. Let's not reinvent the wheel here. What's going on in Colorado? So last August, I went out to American Safety Society Professional Conference. I worked my way into a room I probably shouldn't have been in, threw my ego around, and found out, what are you doing? Nothing. They didn't have anything. They didn't have a program. So what they're talking about is reasonable suspicion. What are you doing? How do we determine if you're on something from today versus yesterday? And this is the part that really it hits home with me personally. You have to be a human being. You have to force the frontline supervisors to go and actually talk to their guys on a regular basis so they can see, yeah, this isn't how he was the past 2 days. I suspect that maybe there's something going on with him. But as a helper, as a fixer for manufacturing, one of the main things they say to us, great, you're going to come in here and give us training. You're going to help us do auditing. You're going to do this. You're going to make us a sunshine place. It's going to be like Chuck E. Cheese. Great, great, great. Can you get us bodies in the door? What do you mean? We can't get anybody to work anymore. Why are you throwing away your employees anyhow? What's going on? Why are they using marijuana? Why are they using drugs? 68% of frontline workers in manufacturing are severely depressed. Severely depressed.
Wow.
So they're turning towards this. They work in the night shift. They have, I got to do it again this week. I know. I swung shifts for 25 years. 25 years. 10 of those were on steady night shift. I remember my sister telling me, you're killing yourself. Why are you doing that? You're going to be hurt. You're going to be like mom. Your back's going to be shot. You're going to be hurt into a machine. Don't tell her, but she was right. So I was hurt on the job. I did run myself into the ground. But you have to talk to the workers. You got to figure out what's going on with them and not throw them away. Be a human being. If you suspect this person is on something, well, he doesn't look like he did 3 months ago. Well, that's because that's maybe the job. Maybe the job is ripping him apart, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's a death in the family. Maybe he's getting divorced. Maybe he's sleeping on the couch. Maybe he's sleeping in his car. Maybe he's having financial problems. It's not necessarily opioid. And Wendy, you would know probably more than me the legal aspects of saying, nope, he's on something. I know it. I know it. He's doing something. That's what his problem is. He's the tie-dye wearing shirt guy. He's falling back on the wagon. He's got a Grateful Dead sticker on his truck. And Wendy, why can't we do that? Why can't we just point fingers?
Yeah, I mean, good question is because that's called judging people, and that is that's pushing discrimination and possibly illegal discrimination or bias. Just
Right.
because you as an individual, our listeners are anti-marijuana or anti-alcohol or anti-divorce or anti-anything doesn't mean that you could project your opinions onto other people. You have to stay within the guidelines of the law. And Brian, thank you for bringing up the fact that we're saying, hey, we can't find workers. We can't keep workers. Well, if you keep judging them, you're not going to continue to find them. And you're also not going to get them to recommend your company for other, candidates to apply. So it goes both ways. The world has changed and we need to make sure that we change with it while keeping our workers safe, our clients, our customers safe, and making sure that we start learning as managers and as HR, what the heck does impairment mean? There's so much of a gray area of impairment. Again, in the old days, people would go to lunch and have cocktails at lunch and then come back to the workplace. Those days are gone. I'm telling you, it's still happening. I know it's happening, but we can't just say, all right, breathe here. Here's a breathalyzer. The other thing I wanted to mention is regarding the breathalyzer part for marijuana is if somebody is ingesting marijuana, they don't always need to smoke it, folks. There's many other ways that they can take in marijuana, so they may not smell like pot. But if they are walking by and they smell like marijuana, have an adult to an adult conversation, because it could have been from yesterday when they were getting treatment. They could also be doing gummies. They could be doing drops, you name it. My point of saying this is there's many different ways that you could smell marijuana. It could also be their cologne. As you said, that could be a hippie. They could like that smell as well. And I want to just also stop and say, please don't make fun of hippies. Don't make fun of anybody. We want to make sure that we're treating our employees and our candidates with the utmost respect that we possibly can. So I have another safety question for you, Brian. Can employees use marijuana outside of work and still be fit for duty?
Well, it depends on what state you live in. After my speaking engagement today, one of the gentlemen who had seen me speak before, he goes, hey, it's getting better. I can see the program's growing, which it is. We're doing even more research on it because we have some learning curves. And hey, I got to ask you, why don't you have the numbers up there? What numbers? You used to have the nanograms per milliliter for Pennsylvania. I said, that's because the law keeps changing. And every time there's an election rolling around, it keeps being stopped. Pennsylvania has a very low amount. But what Pennsylvania police are doing, I know because I've interviewed them, and what OSHA is recommending is simply right back to the reasonable suspicion. You have to go out based on what they have before. And keep in mind, it's not just marijuana. It could be pills. It could be, it could be alcohol. I had to take a guy off a forklift because he had doubled up his dose of blood pressure meds and he was up there in years. But it was a union facility and they were very afraid to do anything because they were going to get in trouble. I said, I'm not afraid and I don't work here. Let me go and talk to him. And the OSHA regulation states that, get him off the equipment, And then after having a human to human conversation with them, he's like, yeah, I've been falling asleep a real lot. What have you done? What has changed? Well, I got new meds. And then he's checking the dose, only to find out he was doubling up his dose of his meds. So that's one of the things that, any kind of medicines that you're any kind of narcotics, you're supposed to reach out to your HR or your supervisor. Say, hey, listen, I'm taking this thing. Because I run safety sensitive equipment and machines, I can hurt myself or somebody else. You need to know about that. But keep in mind, we're not reinventing the wheel here. As much as everybody is excited, my class used to be called Reasonable Suspicion. I used to speak at conferences. It was called Reasonable Suspicion, and I started putting pot leaves on the sign. I started putting, and then I started changing the name to medical marijuana. Bam! People were coming running. Why? Because it's topical. It's topical. It's new. I have that problem at work. But guess what? DOT has been doing this since 1988, Department of Transportation. They've already been dealing with this issue. It just wasn't legal. So they've already have it in place. And it all comes down to frontline supervisors. The frontline supervisors are the ones that have to make the decision and talk and use their facts. Quick story. do some training. I'm always improving myself and all of my courses at a facility, a very nice facility. I like the people. They're great. They tell me they have a problem there. I train about 16 different people on reasonable subsistence training. I don't hear anything from them. And then I run into them at a company event and they go, oh, we got to talk to you. We got something you got to add in your class. I'm like, well, I did have that in my class, but maybe I didn't put emphasis on it. They suspected a woman was possibly using. So they kind of followed her around. They tag team her. A couple guys.
Stalker.
Yes, right? And guess what she did? She dropped a little white bag and they scooped it up. And they ran into the HR office. The lady who also was in my training threw it on her keyboard and the white dust goes everywhere. She says, what are you guys doing? That could be fentanyl. I could be dead. You could be dead. We can all die. What is wrong with you? Didn't you listen to Brian? He had it in the class. So the long story short is the police go out, come back, they collect it. Turns out to be Splenda. Literally.
Oh, wow. So I think the moral of the story here is, folks, is don't judge. I know we do it as humans, but don't judge. How about having a conversation with that employee? Now, I want to say one more thing here, because I read an article that in 2023, the National Institute of Standards and Technology were figured out a way to detect recent cannabis by administering 2 breath tests about an hour apart. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so that's the one where they're going to be coming on April 24th to our event here. It's a new approach. It's 2 separate tests. It's potentially changing the entire industry. And if you don't know about NIST, there where miles per gallon came from. Every measuring device you could think of, this is where it started. They've been around for quite some time. The breath tests for alcohol have been around for nearly a century, which detect ethanol, which is exhaled as a vapor, and it connects to what can actually be in your blood. The problem is, and I can never pronounce it, so I'm just going to call it THC. It's the main psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, but it's a very, very, very small amount. They equate it to finding a needle in a haystack. It's so hard to measure it. And is the person using the equipment correctly? I have clients that have breathalyzers at work. I said, I don't think you can do that. Well, we have a police officer. I said, yeah, but now you're using the police officer's credibility and the township you work in, live in, all that. I don't think you could do that. So you're not going to be able to go out and buy a breathalyzer and just say, here, blow into this. Here, let me lick this. Get me urine. Yeah. You're still going to have to go through that method.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is, folks, you got to get the experts involved. And this is a moving, a living, breathing, moving item. First of all, we want to make sure we take care of our employees. If they need marijuana because of a medical condition or they choose to use it, recreationally, that's on them. Stick with your policies. Make sure you understand what the laws are. Make sure if you are doing some kind of drug testing, you get the experts involved. I personally recommend outsourcing it to everybody unless you have a huge safety department inside. Brian, what are your thoughts on, preparing for the future as these marijuana laws keep evolving and as these tests keep evolving? What's your final piece of advice? I love it.
Mental health. You really have to think about not only who you're hiring, but saving the people that you hire there. I go into a lot of facilities, and if they take safety seriously, I know there's going to be smiles on their faces. I know it's going to be a happier place. And a lot of times, they're not getting huge raises. Their jobs are just a little bit easier, and they have a nice place to talk to. When you have this anguish and this screaming and the yelling and all that, people turn to that. They may have no choice but to suck it up and work here. But they're also going to have an opioid problem. They're also going to have a drug problem. Get your insurance card. Last thing I want to say, get your insurance card. Flip it over. Look for your EAP program. As Employee Assistance Program on the back. That's the number you call. Most insurance companies have it. I see somebody monthly and I could talk to them. It's a counselor, it's a therapist, it's a coach, whatever you need. Make sure if you're going to fire that employee, if you're going to talk to that employee, start there first. Save the employee,
awesome.
Save the person.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing and also scary at the same time because it really is moving so fast. I mean, as of the end of last year, 38 U.S. states have legalized medical marijuana and 24 allowed recreational use. And it's on all the voting, trends to say, are we going forward or are we not going forward? Brian Matyjevich, thank you so much for coming. Hey, how can our listeners connect with you?
Well, I'm not sure. I've got some websites out there. We got nepirc.com and nepirc.com. You could find me on LinkedIn, Brian Matyjevich. Hopefully my name will be in some sort of chat or on some bio here. You can find me on LinkedIn. We have got tons of stuff. And guess what? A lot of free stuff too. A lot of what we do is free.
Awesome.
We have a lot of webinars.
Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. We hope this information in this podcast has been helpful. Thanks for joining us. Take care.